Waterfront property represents less than 1% of residential real estate in Phoenix. It's a unique type of real estate and has a special purpose. As one waterfront buyer said, waterfront property is there to trick my brain and make me forget I'm living in a desert. Others are attracted to the activities that accompany living on a residential lake or love the unparalleled views. Because it is a unique niche, potential buyers should be aware of criteria for waterfront or water view homes that are different than typical non-waterfront real estate. Let's go through the checklist of items that waterfront home buyers should consider when purchasing a waterfront property in one of the many lake communities in the Phoenix area. Views can make or break the appeal of waterfront property. It's a defining characteristic that sets it apart from other types of real estate. Some see it as a welcome alternative to a block wall. Waterfront views have the potential to enhance the value of a home since waterfront homes sell for more than their non-waterfront counterparts. So the first question is, how wide is the waterway or distance from the property edge to the opposite side? To quantify this variable, there are measuring tools within the MLS to assist you in measuring these distances. It's as easy as clicking and dragging to perform the measurement. This will help you from becoming the victim of a skilled photographer that uses a low focal length, wide-angle lens. Next, if you have any interest in the activities allowed on the lake, this is something that should be thoroughly researched because of the variety of what is and is not permitted. A good place to start is observing what other owners on the same body of water are doing. What types of watercraft are they using? Pontoon boats, canoes, paddle boats, kayaks. The restrictions can range from no boats or watercraft at all to those that allow boats for water skiing. The next place to check is the CC&R's, conditions, covenants, and restrictions, for something in writing allowing or restricting lake activities. Here are a couple of examples of CC&R's that mention boating and what types are allowed and not allowed. Lastly, a call to the HOA would be a good step to confirm what you've learned so far. Remember the tool that I mentioned when I discussed being able to measure from one side of the lake to the other? I highly recommend using the same tool to measure the length of the waterway to make sure it's long enough for the activity you're considering. A pontoon boat on a 300-foot long body of water does not make sense at all. Even better, you can watch my video on the best residential lakes for boating that goes into more detail. Now a quick question. Have you learned something? If so, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to let me know you're finding value. And of course, the subscribe bell to be kept in the loop. That's it. Since we live in a desert, an obvious question for a potential waterfront owner would be, what is the source of the water that we see in the residential lakes? You can even look at a satellite view and notice the different shades of watercolor. First off, one clue may be the age of the lake. ARS 45-132 made it impossible to create a residential lake using potable water, either reservoir or well water, after a certain date. That is why the newer lake communities use reclaimed water. These would include Fulton Ranch, Ocotillo Lakes, Pine Lake Estates, and Arrowhead Lakes. Reclaimed water is used throughout the valley, especially for irrigation. For example, if you see a purple cover in a public place, that indicates reclaimed water is being used. Another source for residential lake communities is well water and is associated with the older lakes. That would be Scottsdale Ranch, Oakwood in Chandler, and Lakewood in Phoenix. Lastly, SRP or reservoir water was used before reclaimed water became more common. To find these lakes, you look to the older communities, which would include the lakes at Tempe, the islands, Val Vista Lakes, Garden Lakes in Avondale, and the Springs. Now, when it comes to knowing the source of the water, this is something that an HOA may or may not know. I've called HOAs, and sometimes they've stumbled in their response. Knowing the source of the water is important because it can affect the clarity of the water. Here's a video that you may find helpful. Now, I need to quickly recognize someone that is my go-to source for information when it comes to understanding the ecology of Phoenix residential lakes. Rick Amalfi, owner of Aquatic Consulting and Testing, provides consulting for many of the residential and community lakes in the Phoenix area. He knows about water quality and what goes on in the lakes better than anybody. When I talk to buyers that are looking for waterfront property, fishing is not something that gets brought up a lot. And when I talk to property managers for HOAs, the typical response is, yes, fishing is allowed. but it's catch and release. And this can vary, so my advice is to call the HOA and check the CC&Rs to confirm. Now, this leads us to the next and very interesting question is, what kind of fish are in the residential lakes? They can be broken down into really two groups, utilitarian or working fish and game fish. The working fish are those that help maintain the ecosystem of the lake. For example, white amur helps to control submerged weeds, and goldfish mitigate midge flies. And if there are any recreational fish, they'll most likely be channel catfish and largemouth bass. Now, a valid question that may come up is concerning mosquitoes around the lake communities. These are rarely a concern for a couple of reasons. One, they need protective cover, allowing them to survive when they're young. Second, female mosquitoes prefer to lay their eggs in quiet, shallow waters with vegetative cover. Resident lakes are typically deep, the sides are almost vertical with no shallow water, and aeration systems keep the water moving, making it almost impossible for mosquitoes to survive. Now, when you're considering waterfront property, it's even more important to do a thorough review of the CC&Rs and contact the HOA, because things like the source of the lake water, types of watercraft allowed, and fishing in the lake are not commonly known. The last thing you want to do is for the HOA to come back and say, well, it was in the CC&Rs and you should have read them. Sorry, we can't help you. I know this is a pain, but it's highly recommended. So here's a quick review. Consider the view, which is probably why you're considering a waterfront property in the first place, and use the measuring tool in the MLS listing to quantify distances. Know the source of the water. Understand what activities are allowed on the lake. Research the fishing opportunities if that is important. Pay special attention to the CC&Rs where they directly affect waterfront property. And contact the HOA to confirm what you've found and see if there's anything you should be aware of. And if you'd like more information on waterfront property, check the description below for more videos, and make sure and download my waterfront ebook, which is probably the best compilation of Phoenix waterfront property information out there. And of course, you can always reach out to me at 480-326-8571. Thank you.